estimated that 90% of these injuries could have actually been avoided. Different sports present different risks. What many parents don't know is that baseball is one of the top sports that could lead to eye injuries. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Bradley Meltzer, a VSP Vision Care Optometrist who works with Eye Vision Associates in Lake Ronkonkoma. Thanks for being with us today.
Well, thank you for having me.
How can parents keep their eyes, or kids' eyes, safe, I should say, during sports?
Well, it all starts, I think, making sure that they take their kids for that annual eye exam to get their eyes examined. And the most basic, way that we can protect the child's eyes is just by providing the appropriate eyewear or safety face mask in certain sports. But it really just starts with making sure that you get that child to accept the fact that wearing safety eyewear is very important to make sure we can prevent these injuries.
Well, what are some of the injuries that occur, say, during sports?
Well, you mentioned baseball as one of the sports injuries that's, one of the more common ones that can cause trauma to the eye. But any sport that has a small object, whether it's baseball, racquetball, tennis, the ball at the velocities that they travel can cause blunt trauma to the eyes. It can cause a retinal tear. It can cause a retinal detachment. It can cause inflammation inside the eye called an iritis. The other thing that can happen in sports also is a lot of contact sports, like basketball, is actually probably the second most common sport that can cause injuries to the eye, in that there's a lot of elbows and hands going up to the face. So you get a lot of times you get a scratched cornea or someone getting poked in the eye as a result of the combat that goes on the field and the court.
Now, is there a specific age that kids should start wearing sports-related coverings, if you will, for the eye?
Actually, I think the best thing to do is that if you have a child that is going to be participating in sports, it's probably the best idea to get them into some sort of safety eyewear right from the start. Because I think what happens with children, especially when they become teenagers and they see that their friends aren't wearing safety goggles, it becomes harder as a parent to get your child to understand the importance of wearing something on the face. Whereas if you get them started right from the beginning, then it's no different than when they're wearing cleats or wearing any other type of safety equipment while they're playing sports. It just becomes part of your uniform.
The problem, I would think, would be to convince them that it's not, so to say, a geeky thing. That if all their friends are not wearing goggles, that all of a sudden they'll look like nerds if they're wearing goggles.
Correct. And, I remember when I used to play sports as a child, it was, I would be a hypocrite if I said that the thought of wearing goggles as a child, I would have been totally against it as well. But the styles nowadays, thankfully, there are a lot newer fashion styles out there. They even make sports glasses now. So as long as it's a single piece, frame that's made of a safety material, and a lot of new sunglasses now are coming made with these safety materials. You can get a safety polycarbonate lens put in, which is the same shatter-resistant material that are used in hardware stores on safety goggles. And then you can replace the regular temples on the side. You can replace that with a strap in some of these glasses, so that it actually looks much more fashionable than something we would have had as an option when I was a child.
Well, just like we've heard of all of the anecdotal stories, if you will, of students suddenly underperforming in school, and we find out later it's because they're having vision problems. They can't read what's on the blackboard, so they're taking incorrect notes, etc. Could it be that a student who may be underperforming on the field could have vision problems? They can't see the ball coming to them, so they miss the ball, or they're not playing well on the field because of the same reason.
Right. It's actually very common for a child who has a vision problem to have that be the underlying cause for their performance. And I think one of the biggest misconceptions is that a parent will bring their child to a pediatrician, they'll get their vision screened and come out with good 20/20 eyesight. And yet, that sometimes is not the end-all, be-all in what's important in sports. There's a lot more in the mechanics and how the eyes have to coordinate and aim together with each other, scanning and tracking a field, being able to keep your eye, like they say, keep your eye on the ball. Well, that requires a lot of effort and coordination of aiming, tracking, focusing, shifting your focus from one distance to the other. And if your child has 20/20 eyesight, but a deficiency in how well they use those eyes to do these different activities, they can still suffer from academic, not only sports performance issues, but as well as academic performance issues.
Is there a specific sport that requires more, or shall we say, better visual activity than others?
There is a lot of truth to the saying that hitting a baseball is probably one of the hardest things to do in sports. I mean, if you think about how fast, especially nowadays, kids in high school are throwing the balls, high 80-mile-an-hour fastballs, it's unbelievable how quickly that ball will travel from the pitcher's mound to the plate, and how quickly your eyes have to be able to pick up the pitch, pick up how fast it's moving, where it's going, and then guide the body through the motion of swinging the bat so actually it makes contact with the ball. So it absolutely is a very difficult thing to do and requires a lot of different things besides just good 20/20 eyesight.
Now, what about contact lenses? You know, we have kids' eyes are developing and changing. Does it make, and contact lenses are a lot more expensive, does it make financial sense for parents to invest in contact lenses if the prescription is going to change so quickly in many cases for kids?
Well, there's a couple of things that come to mind when I hear the question regarding contact lenses as an option for children with sports. And the first thing that I know as a contact lens wearer myself is that the field of view you get when you're wearing contact lenses far surpasses what you're going to get with glasses. You don't have that limitation of the frame limiting what you can see on the field. But the downside is that if you're wearing contacts, there's no barrier, again, to protect your eyes from injury. So I always tell parents that while I think contacts are an excellent option for sports, it doesn't preclude the importance of still getting that safety eyewear in place on the child. And contacts, the nice thing about contacts is that if the prescription does change, if your child has a growth spurt, there's no rule that says you can't adjust that prescription and just order a new prescription for contacts halfway through the year, whereas glasses you have to recut and remake an entirely new lens. So there is that advantage.
So don't buy 50,000 sets of contacts.
Not necessarily in the beginning if you think your child's about to have a growth spurt.
What else is important for parents to know? We have about 10 seconds left.
Well, if you don't have an eye doctor already, I would definitely recommend going to VSP.com. There's a locate a doctor link. Find an eye doctor near you to make sure you get your child in for annual eye exams.
All right. I want to thank you so much for being with us today. It is so important. Eye care is essential. It's part of it. Really important to get your kids' eyes checked and to protect them, especially on the field. Thank you, Doc. Good to have you here. And I'm Ken Rosato. We thank you again for joining us. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.